YouTube, vinyl community, John Lennon and Yoko Ono fans, random people on the internet, my name is Giggens. We are here today to talk about John Lennon and Yoko Ono's album from 1980, Double Fantasy, released on Geffen Records. This was the last album put out in John Lennon's lifetime, and easily one of his best. I know this is kind of split down the middle for a lot of people between either the topics of the songs or the on and off John and Yoko songs mixed together. Like a lot of people have a problem with that, but overall, for a piece of work from two really talented artists, I think this is a fantastic album. And I like the sentiment behind it, I like the message behind it. There's a lot I could talk about with this album. I can spend an hour doing it, but instead I'm going to try to spark notes the hell out of this thing to make it as condensed as I possibly can. So here we go. Long story short, let's go back to 1975. John had put out his rock and roll album. He had just gotten back together with Yoko. They just had Sean. You could read the rest of it there. But in that 5 years between 75 and 80, he didn't put out music. He was just hanging out, going on vacations with his family, just enjoying life, being home. And there's nothing wrong with that. For a guy who spent all of his 20s living on the road and then running from screaming fans, constantly putting out music, the break was well deserved. And I think without that, this album would have never happened. I think the inspiration and the creativity and the subject matter, all of that coalesced to become what this is. So this is Double Fantasy, or as it's subtitled, a heart play, where one song is John, one song is Yoko, and it's meant to be a call and response throughout the whole album. Basically the story of a relationship. And I really like it. I like Yoko's songs on this thing a lot. I love John's songs. I think it's a fun, interesting album that's full of heart, soul, reflection, introspection, forward thinking. It's just an album of, here I am at this age, this is what's happening to me now. And he was very open about that. He was very open about, like, look, this is me at 40. I'm not going to try to fit in with everybody else. Like, this is what's happening to me now, and literally this is for me and my friends that are also at this age. If you don't like it, I don't really care, because this is what's happening. He wasn't concerned with topping the charts. He wasn't concerned with, like, being, you know, the #1 artist. He just wanted to make music that felt good and that meant something. If there's one thing John Lennon is known for, it's having a vision and believing in something and being honest. You know, all I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. So, with that, the inspiration behind this album, a lot of it has to do with him taking a boating trip to Bermuda in early to mid-1980. There was even a point where most of the people on the crew were sick and couldn't handle managing the boat, and so he actually had to drive this boat, or steer, or whatever operate this boat, for a very long period of time, basically testing the limits of what he thought he can do and learning a lot about himself in that process. And one of those things where just the floodgate opened and all the songs came pouring out. It's not like he stopped playing music for 5 years, it's just that he just didn't really jump into it. Like, once in a while he horsed around with it, but going head over heels, head first, this is the most focused sounding album he had in years. Because his solo career is a little spotty, to put it loosely. Like, there's definitely a lot of peaks and valleys with his solo career, but when it comes to this album, for me, he is extremely focused, he's determined, he's got that hunger, he's ready, that fire is under his ass, and he's ready to prove himself to the world that, I'm here now, this is me, let's see what the 80s have to offer, as he once worded it in one of those videos. And that's kind of how we start this thing off. So November 17th, 1980, this album came out. It went to #1 in the UK and the US. It was an immensely popular album, especially after he was murdered. But it also because so much of the album itself holds up to what could have been. And I think because of him tragically being taken away from us, the album hits even harder, because so much of the album is like, gee, I really like being with my kid, I really like being with my wife, I can't wait to see what happens in the next decade, I can't wait to see what happens in the next part of my life, the next career, the next move I'm going to make. It sucks that all of that got taken away because of what happened. truly sucks. But the album starts off with Just Like Starting Over, which has always been one of my favorite tracks ever since I was a little kid. I've always loved this song. And it starts off with these really pleasant bells, these really, nice little chimes. And that totally has to be a callback to the Plastic Ono Band with the song Mother, where the church bells, signaling the end of something. This sounds like a new start, and I think that's probably what they were going for. They were probably echoing that era. Again, I can go so deep into this, but I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. There's so many great demos of songs from this album, so many great books out there of the guys all making this thing together, like Earl Slick and Hugh McCracken, who has the honor of having worked with all 4 Beatles in their solo career, which is pretty cool. But Earl Slick having also worked with Bowie and stuff in the past, so like a lot of heavy hitters were on this thing. And eventually a couple of the guys from Cheap Trick showed up. But Just Like Starting Over, beyond just a song that sounds like, hey, I haven't been here for 5 years, I'm going to start over again. It's got that connotation. It's also got the connotation of, looking backwards and thinking, where has my relationship gone? What has it been like? What can it be like? Think of the good times. This is one of those things. It's totally got that 50s appeal, so it sounds like, there's the stripped down version says, this is for Gene and Eddie and Buddy, and Elvis, all these 50s hero icons who were playing rock and roll. Because it's got that 50s, malt shop vibe with the bouncy pianos and the really nice guitar riffs. He sounds rejuvenated. It's a whole different John Lennon. Like, for the rock and roll album, for me, it just sounds like someone going through the motions. It's a good album, but it feels like someone just, like, there because they had to do it, which is what it was. But, like, it just sounds like he's just kind of there. This sounds like he's, like, excited and stoked to be in the studio again, making new music and ready to show off what he's got. I love how this song, while still filled with nostalgia, is so forward-thinking and, like, earnest. It's just an endearing, true, honest song. It's such a great opener. And like I said, he hasn't sounded this focused in a long time. Great track. I love the production. I love the drums, which were apparently that bit at the end, that dun, 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 that part was actually fused together over a couple of takes, so that you really couldn't recreate that. It's the melding of 2 takes together, which is kind of cool. But amazing, amazing opener track. One of his best songs of his career, hands down. Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. So this is when we jump into the Yoko stuff. And I know a lot of people might eye roll or groan, but I like Yoko's songs on this album. I think they're very, very of their time. They're very cool. They're vibrant. They're a little eerie. This track in particular sounds like it would have fit on Fear of Music by Talking Heads. I know at the time, John was discovering the B-52s and saying, hey, they stole your sound. They would fit really well on this album. Yoko totally fits in with that new wave vibe, and she's always done that. She's been really of the times ever since. She doesn't really look backwards too much. For being an artist, she's really on top of the now. And she's coming out with a new album again. As I'm making this video in 2018, there's another one on her way. Very, very cool to see that she's still making albums well into her 80s. But, yeah, the only thing missing from this song is the B-52s, but I love the spooky nature of the instrumentation. I love the swirling stereo effects on Yoko's voice. She does a bit of the Yoko stuff at the end vocally, which is kind of fun. In small doses on this album, but it works. I think it works really well there. It's catchy, and I think if you played this song for someone and said, this is Joe Schmo and the Hurricanes, you would be like, oh, cool, great song. But if you're like, this is Yoko Ono, it's got that connotation where they're like, oh, I'm not even going to listen to it, but it's a good song. Cleanup Time. I love the peppy delivery on this one. Spirited vocal from John again is great. The sprightly horns against the excellent guitar soloing. Really tight drum production on this track in particular. I like the drums a lot on this one. But overall, it's just a joyous melody. It's got a cool beat. It's just kind of fun to hear John having a good time. What's wrong with that? Give Me Something. This is a really interesting song. It's very spacey, and for me, it sounds like something out of a 50s horror movie. Yoko's totally weird and dramatic vocals. The melody, like I said, sounds like a horror movie. Killer guitar solos. I like the time changes a lot in this one. A lot of this stuff has to do with Earl Slick's talent. He was an excellent guitarist, and having come off the Bowie train, I think he was used to playing some weird stuff, and really effectively too. I think that all builds up really well to match Yoko's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Her output, her style, her feel, the vibe she's trying to come across with. I think she sounds really current. Kind of cool. Then you get the track I'm Losing You, which is absolute classic John Lennon. It's got that biting guitar, it's got that sneer, it's got that sort of angry feel to it. You know, the angry young man syndrome. It's dry, it's raw, it's bordering on manic, and it sounds totally lost. Like, apparently he wrote it about one time he was trying to phone Yoko when he was on the boat, and she wasn't picking up, and he just kind of wrote this song like, you know, when you get lost in your own head, you go down the rabbit hole, and you start writing about all the negative things that could possibly be happening, and this is one of those tracks. I mean, it's acerbic, it rocks like hell. It sounds like a George Harrison guitar solo frenzy in the middle. That sounds like George so hard to me, which I think is cool. I wonder if that was like a throwback, you know, saying hi to George or something on that one. But this song could have easily fit on the White Album or Abbey Road. No problem. Hands down. It sounds like that kind of music. Two of the guys from Cheap Trick actually recorded a version with him during these sessions, but Yoko thought they were just like riding the coattails of John Lennon, so it wasn't released until 1998 for the Lennon Anthology. Which is funny to think, because like they were like on top of the world for years, and they're one of the best-selling rock bands of all time, probably. But yeah, these new guys, these upstarts, were trying to capitalize on the Lennons here. And then it fades right into the song I'm Moving On. Yoko, again, and this track in particular really is like a call and response track in the sense of the term. Musically, it has like its own little riff, that like its own little I'm Losing You riff. The construction of the song right down from verse to chorus, and the syncopation and the amount of lyrics, you know, per line, which I guess is syncopation, I just said it twice. Totally sounds like I'm Losing You. So it's kind of cool to hear her little biting version of the same sentiment right back. The held note at the end, I think, is really cool. But that riff sticks with you. It sticks with you just as much as I'm Losing You does. Then we jump over to Beautiful Boy, which is just a very, very sweet, tender song about his boy Sean when he was a kid. You know, the bells and the chimes in the intro, nice pleasant acoustic guitars. I like the steel drums on this song. I know a lot of the times I kind of rag on steel drums, but on this one, I dig them. I think they're cool. John's doing his Julia voice, so it's very delicate, it's beautiful, it's expressive, and he's just showing how much love he has for his kid. I think it's a great song. It's songs like this that really make it hard to listen to, because you know what happened next. You know, like when he says, like, you know, like good night Sean and stuff at the end, it's like, that sucks. Like, he was taken away right here. Like, it's awful. Yeah, but it's just him being a dad, being home, taking his kid out, having fun, living life, doing their thing, being normal people. I love the ocean sounds. I love the peaceful waves at the end. A very, very endearing, charming, beautiful track. And then you get side two with Watching the Wheels. I love this song. There's a great acoustic version of this song that exists out there too that's probably even more effective. But the production on this one has a really nice airiness too. I like the space it creates. But the piano riff is so catchy, it sticks in your head. John's just being his open, upfront, confessional self, just like he always had been. Telling it like it is. He's like, here's what I've been up to. I'm hanging out, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I don't care what's happening on the charts. I don't care about what anyone else is doing. This is just my life. So as you're busy doing your thing, I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I like the way they watch the roll. You know, he's just being happy. And that's such a nice thing to hear, that he's found some sort of peace in his life. Things have calmed down to the point where he feels cool with just hanging out. That's really nice. It's one part emotional, one part letting go. And the music itself, I love the music, especially at the end. I just had to let him go, that whole part. The way it builds up, then brings down again. Very effective, very, very fun to listen to. Yes, I'm Your Angel. The sound effects, the walking, the distant piano begins to play. Then a very like vaudeville style of music happens with Yoko doing like a vaudeville bit. Completely out of left field, but I think it's cool. I think it works. It's pretty, it's homely. I don't think it's meant to be taken seriously. I think it's meant to be a bit of fun. Just to kind of play around a little bit. It's a nice little slice of domestic life. From one love to another. I mean, some people want to fill the world with silly love songs. What's wrong with that? Woman. This is just a stunning classic from John to Yoko. It's full of heart and soul. It's truly endearing. It's warm. It's powerful. And it's so delicately sung, but it's so passionately sung at the same time. And man, what a chorus. I mean, holy moly, that thing blows you over, man. If that's not a hook, I don't know what is. Every line of this song is soaked in poetry, and it's just such a mature, earned song from living life with somebody through every daily bit of things you go through with somebody to be like, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm still absolutely nuts about you, and this is my declaration to you. It's an absolutely, truly beautiful song. It's one of those things that comes out that, one, has its own little sound, but two, like, out of nowhere. Again, it's just like, this is the guy who's been dormant for 5 years, and here's this explosion of some of the best songs he's ever done on one album. It's incredible. Beautiful Boys. This is an interesting track. This is very like somber, almost Baroque, Victorian in its melody, and totally sad overall. What a weird song. I feel like the whole thing is classically inspired, but the lyrics are a little on the darker side, like, you know, like, watch yourself, like, be careful, like, take care of yourself, which is a weird juxtaposition over Beautiful Boy on side one. Dear Yoko, there's a great video of him. The cool thing about this era is there are so many home videos, and they're all available on YouTube, or no, there's a ton of them on YouTube, where you can watch him playing Dear Yoko, like, by himself in a room somewhere. He's wearing a hat, just like strumming his guitar, making up this song. It sounds like John's doing his Buddy Holly voice. I love the happy sax in the background, the shuffling hi-hat throughout this thing. Really crisp drums on this track. I like that a lot. But it's catchy, it's lightweight, it's fun and sweet. I know a lot of critics were like, oh, you're only going to like this album if you're married to Yoko Ono. But it's like, look, people write love songs about their relationships every day. He just happens to put a name on there. It could be anybody. But it's, you know, it's for Yoko. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with two people being in love with each other? Like, come on, man. Like, Mr. Scrooge over here. What do we got next? Every man has a woman who loves him. This is a dancey, talking head sounding song as well. This one for me was definitely like another Fear of Music or Remain in Light songs. It sounds like Listening Wind off Remain in Light. That's what it sounds like, Listening Wind, yes. Yoko sounds incredibly sweet and comfortable on this one, and it's got like a cool like Munsters solo, which I think is fun. And then the album ends with Hard Times, which is kind of like John and Yoko singing together that hard times are over. You know, there's a big choir throughout this thing. It's got a 50s rock feel again, so it's another call and response to the side one, track one. And again, it's sad because like they're singing Hard Times are over, and it's almost like hard times were just about to begin. So there's a lot on this album that I feel like I can go into way more detail on. I might make a part 2 where I go into way more about this thing because there's so much to talk about between how the album officially came to be, the recording sessions, the people involved. There are so many stories. And believe me, this video is already going on 20 minutes, so your humans' attention spans have already stopped at this point. But, here we go. Here's the label. You might not be able to see that. Yeah. It's the white Geffen label of the Times. And it's got the Lennon music on it, label as well. Overall, I really do enjoy this album. The stripped down version is interesting, because really the stripped down stuff really basically only affects John's stuff. It doesn't really hit Yoko's stuff too much, in terms of what's been taken away. Because John would double track his voice like 2 or 3 times because he wasn't too keen on it, and a lot of the guitar parts get taken away. But overall, rating this album, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10, 7 or 8 out of 10. I think it's a fascinating album. It's always intrigued me, because I was born, years after this thing had come out. So I never got to live in the period where John was alive. Had I been there, I think this would have been even more important, even more of a bigger statement than what it feels like now, having grown up with it in the years since he passed away. But, yeah, I like Yoko's songs on here a lot. I love John's songs on here. I think it's the most focused, coherent piece of work they did in years, since the early days. It's just a great album. It's just a fun album to listen to. I like the dynamic, the back and forth, the heart play that they do. I think is a successful notion. So that's it. 8 out of 10. John and Yoko, Double Fantasy. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with John and Yoko, Double Fantasy. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. And that's it. Bye-bye.